Hello, welcome to another edition of Have You Ever Heard? Today, my guest is Donna McElroy, a legendary session singer in Nashville who you've heard on albums by everyone from Millie Jackson to Garth Brooks to Amy Grant. In 1990, she recorded her first solo album, Bigger World, and that album is the center of our conversation. I hope you enjoy.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Have You Ever Heard? I feel like I say this at the beginning of every show this season, but I have really lucked out because I've gotten to talk with some of my favorite people in the world this season. And today is no exception. I first heard Donna McElroy when I was 10 years old. And that's not really true. I saw her in person for the first time when I was 10 years old, but I had heard her a few years prior on a concert video by Amy Grant and was so struck by the sound. But there's nothing that compared to seeing her at 10 in full force with, at the time, Kim Fleming and Renee Garcia. And I heard harmony, and they stepped out and did a set of their own on that show. And I, to this day, have never heard anything like that sound. And so I'm thrilled that Donna is joining me today to talk about her album, one of her albums, her first solo album, Bigger World. We're going to be talking about this. But today, Donna is a professor at Berkeley School of Music in the voice department, accomplished singer, songwriter, producer, arranger, vocal coach, to the gods, and just beyond that, just a great spirit that I'm really privileged to call friend. That was a really long intro, Donna. I'm sorry. Welcome.
That's all right, darling. Welcome. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, I, you know, if anybody, most people probably watching have heard you, so this is not a surprise to them. But you really are um, an original in a world. I said this to another guest as well, because this season really has just been about original people. Nobody sounds like you,
Mm.
but more importantly, nobody says the things that you have said in song. And so I'm really excited to dig into the beginning of your solo life. But many people in for over a decade prior to Bigger World knew your voice from Nashville session work.
Mm.
And so I'd like to talk a little bit about, just set a little context for how you settled into the world of music in Nashville.
Mm. Um, One word, Fisk.
Yes.
So I went to Fisk as a 16-year-old from Louisville, Kentucky. And it was a fortuitous opportunity to go to the Fisk Chapel and sing for the then president, President Lawson, who immediately there granted me a full scholarship, a full ride. And I began in 73, fall of 73, and I immediately knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a performer. So that meant that I didn't major in arts or a science. I majored in performance. My degree, I wanted it to be in performance. So I immediately started performing. And I go to voice lesson, and my but did I mention I smoked? And I'd go to
Oh,
voice lesson. Did I mention anything that burnt? And I'd go to voice lesson, and my voice teacher would say, "No, you don't come to me like that. Go, go. Don't come back until you have your body together. And then you might try bathing." I was like, I was like, I'd been up all night playing cards, getting high, drunk, whatever, and then I could think I could just breeze on up into there and sing some La Traviata, and Sempre Libera, and it wasn't happening. So she taught me that there are consequences to my irresponsibility.
mm,
because she flunked me one of those semesters.
Wow.
And I really had to pull it together and act like an actual student who wanted to graduate. I didn't really care about honors and summa cum or whatever. I just wanted out of school so I could start planning a career. Little
Yes.
did I know, I should have been planning the career in school.
Right.
I was waiting to get out of school so my career would start.
Right.
Little did I know, my career was already started. It just didn't was it was just sitting there, just
Yes.
spinning around. And so though I was singing on a lot of things, I had no direction. And to this day, I don't know how to look at that. I don't know how to look at it as, well, there you go. That's your career right now. Nobody knows what to call you. You're not a gospel singer, you're not a jazz singer, you're not a country singer, you're not an R&B singer. Yeah, but I'm a singer.
Yeah.
And you call me for a jazz project and I can sing.
That's
You
right.
call me for a country project and I can ooh and ah.
That's right.
You call me for some gospel and I can testify.
That's right.
I may not do a lot of runs like Shalea, no, 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 no. But I don't feel like I have to, you know, simply because I was trained in the way to use my voice healthily and expressively and
Hmm.
get my point across. So, to each his own. So, I got out of Fisk. I had been singing different uh, concerts. I did a senior concert with the Classics, and then I did a senior concert in Jubilee Hall with cover tunes: Donny
Okay.
Hathaway, Stevie Wonder, Chaka Khan, Roberta Flack. I had got my own band. I put the band together.
Hmm.
3 background singers, horns. I think were in this. It was a fabulous concert. And so these two guys named Sanchez Harley
Wow.
and Lloyd Barry came to the concert. And the next week, after I had, gotten like out of school, the next week after I got out of school, they came looking for me and they asked me to go to Africa with them to sing background in a band that had been made up of different pieces of James Brown's organization.
Wow.
And so we went to the French West Coast of Africa, and I sang behind the guy who is now the president of Gabon. His name is Alain Bongo, President Bongo. He was 18, and his father gave him some money, and we toured the French West Africa coast. Then I came back and I started doing background sessions. I started singing mainly demos for Lloyd and Sanchez.
Okay.
And my best friend Vicky Hampton moved from Louisville, Kentucky to co-sing with me, and we did a lot of background vocals, and we arranged on the spot, hit arrangers. And then we met up with a woman named who's legendary and nobody mentions anymore, Leah Jane Baronati. I don't know where Leah Jane is now, but she was the beginning for us of introduction into the country
Okay.
market. And
Okay.
so she brought us on a Conway Twitty record, and they said, "Well, you bringing some black chicks? Well, maybe I can do that slow hand song that the Pointer Sisters did. Maybe we can get some credibility by you adding some black backgrounds."
Wow.
So he did. I want a girl with a slow hand,
Yes.
slow hand, that kind of thing. And then Barbara Mandrell sang, "If loving you is
Yes.
wrong, I don't want to be right." She took that right out from, who was it, Luther Ingram?
Luther Ingram and Millie Jackson.
She took that right out of there. But they were able to do these because they had Vicki Hampton, Yvonne Hodges, and Donna McElroy adding R&B gospel Afrocentric
That's
credibility
right.
to that country music.
That's right.
And then the country industry started to get a little bit more. Look at the country music right now. Hell, bless my soul. I mean, it's all the way over on the other side now, okay?
Yes.
So we started working. Kenny Rogers, Charlie Rich, Charlie Pride,
Crystal
Dolly
Gale.
Parton, Crystal Gale, and it was with Crystal Gale that right after in '81, I drove off a cliff. That's a
Mhm.
whole other interview, Timothy.
Yes.
I drove off a cliff. I recovered from the as much as I could from the car accident. Had a head injury. Was kind of amnesiac for several decades. Still a lot of stuff I can't remember. Uh, and and but one thing I did know, I could sing. So
Yeah.
I have my nurse take me to the studio, and I'd sing this background session. I'd sing all three parts and then double them, and then I'd say, "Okay, come on." I'd shuffle back to the car, and she'd take me home, and she was like, "Wow, you actually are recovering. You know, most of the people I'm a private duty nurse to, they're on their way to the grave." I'm like, "Well, not me, baby.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get my life back."
Well, and you told me a great story once. I'm if we can edit this out if you don't want it in, but it's such a great story about, and I think it really connects to the power of music. And you told me one night we were at dinner, and you said that you were on stage with Crystal Gale, and you had this click moment. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I was out on the road. Crystal hired me in something like July. We went out on our first tour, mostly Vegas, the MGM Grand in Vegas, but we did a lot of state fairs and a lot of small venues, medium to large venues.
Hmm.
And we're in the MGM Grand one night, and we're on stage, we're singing, and I think it was Half the Way. You don't take me half the way, yeah. And I was like, don't take me half the way. I was on the bottom. And I'm standing there and I'm singing, and I look out over the stage and I don't recognize who that is. Who is that with all that hair? Where am I? And I'm looking and I'm kind of and the woman who was responsible for me having the job had a head injury, Patty
Mm.
Lovelace. She had a head injury, and she was the one who urged Crystal to hire me in the first place. And she saw that look on my face, and she said, "You're in Vegas, Dee. You're with Crystal." And so I said, "Oh, expletive deleted."
No.
And then I started, "Don't take me half the way." And I started kind of tearing up a little bit. I didn't realize, how did I get on stage in Las Vegas, Nevada, when the last thing I remember was I was going to a rehearsal with Sanchez Harley and Lloyd Barry to work
Wow.
on my showcase that we were trying to get me a record deal.
Wow.
How did that happen?
Wow.
Yeah, so I went to the end of that leg of the tour, and I quit. And I started singing in a relief band on Sunday nights with Cliff Richmond and the Apollo Band.
Wow.
And we would do the Holiday in Vanderbilt every Sunday night. And we'd start
Wow.
at about 7:30 or 8 o'clock, and we'd go until 11:30. And that was my top 40 cover band experience. Yeah.
Well, there's an interesting then what happens after your time with Crystal, and you were still doing country sessions. You were also, we need to add, you were doing Millie Jackson's records at that
Yeah.
time. I mean, so many people, but those
Yeah.
Millie Jackson records in particular to
Yeah.
show the range
Yes.
of sounds that you were covering. And then you started working in contemporary Christian music as well. It expanded to
Yes. Yes.
Christian music,
Yes.
which, I mean, so many records. Kathy Tricoli.
Kathy Mattea, Kathy Tricoli, Tanya Tucker. I did Tanya Tucker. What was that Tanya Tucker tune called? Cleopatra, Queen of Denial.
Wow.
That was one of my. I pull that out for my students. I'm like, yeah, that's me on the bottom. Yeah, some of the craziest records. I mean, that's part of my DNA now.
Yes.
And then I started singing with I was all this time that I was doing all those others. It was varied. So
Yes.
country people would call me, Christian people would call me. Then BB and CC Winans called me.
Right.
You know, it was varied. Millie Jackson, who knew? You know, but
And
it was here's a little bit of an important thing to remember. It was not the artists who were calling me. It was the
right.
producers who
Yes.
knew how to get a great sound on their record. And they would say to that artist, I'm going to get you some background singers who are going to blast you away. They're going to blow you away. You're going to want to take these girls out on the road. And so
Yes.
that's what she did. I drove off a cliff, and she took Millie took Vicky and Yvonne out on the road with her, and they were with
Wow.
Millie for like maybe 12, 13 years,
Wow.
while I was flailing around trying to find something to do. And one night I'm in this gig at the Vanderbilt Holiday Inn, and the whole Blanton Herald stable comes over for an after meeting drink.
Hmm.
Amy, Gary, Michael W., Kathy Tricoli, Pam Mark Hall, I think was
Wow.
with them.
Yep.
Michael W. I think it was the whole stable of Blanton Herald artists. And the next week they asked me to join Amy and help her build her stage career, because she was just they had just released Father to Son. What is it?
My Father's Eyes.
El Shaddai.
Oh, Age to Age.
Age to Age. They had just released it, and My Father's Eyes was hot then, and we learned How Majestic.
Yes.
Yes, that's the
Sing
one.
Your Praise to the Lord was
Fat Baby.
that.
Wow,
Yes.
wow, wow, wow. All of that
Yes.
stuff. That was our first tour, and it was me, Kim, and Renee Garcia. Yeah.
That's right. And you did that with Amy from 81-ish, 82, up to I mean the particularly Heart and Motion, but around after Lead Me On, I'm fast forwarding a little bit because you
Yeah.
had an incredible career
Yeah.
aside from just doing the sessions, just touring with Amy,
Right.
was nonstop during those
Right.
years.
Right.
But then you and I want to get a little context for how you came to Warner Brothers, but you made this album called Bigger World that came out in I always get it blurred, 1990. 1990.
Right.
And this was in a sense an experiment for Warner Brothers. And so can you talk a little bit about how you came to be a part of this little experimental label that came to be known as Warner Alliance?
Well, Jim Ed Norman, who was a previous member, I think, of the Eagles, and was had been assigned to Nashville by Warner West Coast,
Mm-hmm.
decided he wanted to do a little experiment, and he wanted to sign some other than country, some African American artists, some gospel, some maybe R&B,
Mm-hmm.
and he heard Take Six, and he said, I'm going to sign these guys, and their name was Alliance.
That's
And
right.
he said, I'm going to change their name. I'm going to call it Take Six. And you know that song by Dave Brubeck, Take Five? And I said, yeah, I know Take That. Da, 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 da. And he said, oh, yeah, okay, you're good. You're really good. Literate, musically literate. So
Yes.
the next few weeks went by, and Thomas Kane,
Mm-hmm.
old friend,
Yes.
ally, partner, was doing this is how God works. He was doing a concert at Fisk
Lord
and
have
asked me to sing background and do a song while he did his concert at Fisk in the chapel, the
Wow.
first place that I sang at Fisk.
Wow.
And so when it was time for me to sing, I sang Since I Fell for You. Everybody in the audience knew who Donna Mac was. They were just going nuts, and it was crazy. And at the end of that concert, Jim Ed, who had been in the audience searching for venues for Take Six, came up to me and said, what are you doing singing background vocals? Why are you doing that? Come see me next week after fanfare is over, and I'm going to sign you. And so he signed me, but he didn't really know what was ahead. And he told me that. We sat in his office and he said, "I don't know what's ahead." He said, "I don't know what your dreams are. I don't think I'm going to be able to fulfill all of them, but I can give you an idea of how to shape them better. At least this experience will help you know what you don't want."
Yes.
So he dumped me over onto the Warner machinery, and I can't say anything wrong about anybody there, because people did not know how to take me, because they had never handled African American talent, African American artists. That wasn't their gig, and I think they felt a little bit, maybe not insulted, but definitely challenged
Mm.
and put upon, who helped. And I think because of my talent, my vocal ability, it was assumed kind of that it was going to be easy to
Hmm.
figure out a direction. And they kept pitching me to all of these songwriters that were staff writers for Warner. And I wasn't going for any of the songs. So that's when I said, "Okay, let me sit down and write you what I would like to sing."
Mm.
And the first thing I wrote was "Part of Me," which is
Wow. Wow,
that
that was the first.
was
Okay.
the first song.
Well, and let's talk about, I mean, the fact that that song, the thing that struck me when I first heard that song, and it's the first song on the record as well. And so it's like this immediate bam. And you're not just hit with voice, you're hit with a message. And it was a message. And again, I want to set a little context, because you did what you brought to Warner Alliance was name recognition, not just from within the session, Nashville musicians and people who know who's singing on records. You were also bringing, I think it was assumed, I would bet it was assumed, that you were bringing a certain amount of recognition from your time with Amy.
Christian cachet, yes.
And so the first thing you're met with on this record is this song about racism.
That's exactly right.
And
I just wanted to get it out of the way before we can move any further. Warner World and everybody, I don't think that because I smile, I'm not noticing things. I'm not aware.
yes.
I'm aware, and so let's move on now. And then the next song was this nice and lonely,
Well,
that kind of thing.
Well, and I would actually challenge that a little bit, because I think that what's so intriguing about this whole record is because I feel like it's you and they've put you in this, this world of this album, and you're just like pushing all of these boundaries open. Like you are pushing open this
Yes,
box that,
yes,
because you're messaging. So part of me talks about racism very head on. It's first person talking to another person.
right.
Um,
Or talking to a demographic,
yes,
a population.
yes.
Right.
I've been looking for a way, trying very hard to let you know my feelings.
Yeah, because every time I'm around you, you're just so. I love your voice, and oh my God, I know you just oh my God, I know how do and I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
not the only one. I'm not the only, especially African American
that's right.
artist who goes through that while they're out on the road singing back up behind country and gospel acts. I'm not
That's
the only
right.
person who just has to kind of zip it. It's like,
Well, the other one of the other people I've talked to this season who actually relayed very similar stories and some really kind of harrowing stories. I talked with Bob Bailey, um, who talked about his life in contemporary Christian music, and the experience of being
yeah,
the only Black person in a group, being on the road, having to stay in white people's homes while on the road, and them
yeah,
wanting to touch his hair and
yes,
see what he smelled like, and
yes,
all of these, being this
yes,
mannequin in a
right,
sense
right,
for these people. And so I think it's really brave and daring, because at that time I can't think of another record within that world that did this.
Probably there wasn't one, and probably it set the seed for several other artists' growing courage and
Yes.
enthusiasm about not being afraid to state what they felt. But it wasn't supposed to happen for me.
Mm.
I was only the seed planter. I was not the celebrator of the fruits of the tree.
Well, and I would argue, and there were several things that anybody that picks up this album and reads not just the lyrics, because the lyrics are a whole message of their own, but then when I was reading your acknowledgments, the thing that struck me 30 years ago was you list this range of particularly women artists that inspired you in your thank yous. And so to me, that was what said to me, whatever you think she is, from just listening to these 10 incredibly diverse songs, she's so much more than this. Because just by acknowledging the people you acknowledged in that, they ranged from Sarah Vaughan to Shaka Khan to, I'm trying to remember, Leontine Price. You know, you acknowledged all of these women. And I went, this woman's musical catalog, like what she can pull on to render all of these sounds, is so much bigger than what this record can even contain.
Well, that's the reason why I tell my young, especially women voice students, how important it is to be listening to old and new. Don't just listen to the new stuff. Don't just, yeah, that was really really, and I liked that. I really liked that. But you know, she sounds like Phoebe Snow. Do you know Phoebe Snow? See, you owe it to yourself to go search for Phoebe Snow. See,
That's right.
you gotta go back and see where this some of this stuff is influenced from.
Yes.
It doesn't sound anything like Phoebe Snow, maybe to you, but I hear Phoebe Snow influence.
Yes.
Even maybe this girl that's singing that you love doesn't even know she's imitating Phoebe Snow.
That's
But
right.
I hear that her mother played Phoebe Snow when she was in the crib. And she grew up building her vocal identity from part of that being an essence of her sound. I just feel like you cannot listen to something and not become affected by it, altered by it, sonically
Yes.
altered by it. And so the more you listen to, the more diverse, the more versatile, the more wide of a range of possible sounds that you can make, not just this one little bitty thing that a lot of the young singers are doing now. And don't get me wrong, if it's working, you go for it.
Yeah.
If it's working, you go for it. But if you one of these days want to learn how to actually look for a good song and learn how to sing it, and come call mother, I'll make some time for you.
Well, and I mean, again, I'm going to go to I feel like we're going to ping pong back and forth between voice and message a lot in this conversation because bigger world, I mean, in a sense, it ties in with, being a good listener is part in expanding your world, not, and what you're talking about in this album, particularly the title track that comes right after Part of Me, is about imagining a bigger world. And so you come behind this, hard hitting song about racism, and then you're saying, okay, yeah, and now you need to stretch your ideology. It's not just about let's have this conversation, and maybe I'm reading too much into the song, so I didn't write it, so I don't want to speak
Well,
for
no, no, I'm gonna say it like I said it. Okay, pow, pow, pow. Stop that. Now come over here and look. What? Let mommy show you a couple of things that'll make you very much more happy, very
yes.
much more smarter, more emotionally connected to other people around you.
Yes.
This out. Check this out. No, no. And oh, by the way, on the other hand, there's this other thing over here that I have for you. Did I tell you he's everything to me?
Yeah.
I just said, you know, and the what do you call it? I don't want. What do you call it when you use the? I'm a clinging vine. You're my tree. The
Yes. I'm a
the
spring
metaphor.
shower, your March, April, May for me.
Yeah, I just love that. And it came from my thoughts, my heart,
Yes.
my brain. And that was, I still feel like that is one of the best songs that I ever wrote.
I'll be true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything to me.
Everything to me. Yes.
Everything to me.
That's
Yes.
right.
That's my personal testimony to God.
Wow.
Yeah. And see, none of those songs sounded like gospel.
No.
Hawkins, there was no Hawkins, there was no Winans, there was no Caesar, there was no Walker, there was no nothing gospel. Bobby Joe, nothing gospel. There was no gospel in any of those songs, traditional gospel sounds.
Right.
And that was the conflict with the record company was you're writing a jazz R&B record, but we can't market it in the jazz R&B market because all your lyrics are uncompromisingly scriptural. And so I said, well, welcome to the new world because that's
Yeah.
that's that's what Christians are going to have to be. They're going to have to be not a contemporary Christian artist, but an artist who is a contemporary
That's right.
Christian.
That's right.
That's been my line all the way through from day one.
Well, and I feel like, I mean, and that's what also what you had spent a decade working in. Amy Grant made that kind of music. She made music that was rooted in Christian principles, but was relatable. And I think that's what's also so contagious to me about this record. I couldn't stop playing it. I haven't stopped playing it for 30 years. It's just a great record that whatever your faith journey is, and the reality is, I think for many of us, like our faith journey changes. What we believe, maybe not at the root, but what our blooms are, throughout our life changes based
Yes.
on what we're experiencing. And so
Yeah.
I can listen to Bigger World and it can mean something different to me today than when I heard it there based on where I am and
Yeah.
what I understand about life. And this is a journey album.
Yes. It is. It is. And I listen to these songs now and I'm thinking, wow, I was writing prophecy for myself because there's a couple of those tunes that are saying what's going on in my life right now.
Yes. Yes.
Experiencing that. Wow.
Well, and I mean, the title track to me is speaking to exactly where we are in our culture in this moment. You
Yes.
know, the call to empathy, the call to understanding, to bypassing what my need is to see the need of another.
Yes.
I mean, it's just where and maybe that
Absolutely.
never changes, but it feels particularly timely right
Absolutely.
now.
Why don't you call Warner tomorrow and ask them if they will re-release it? They'd have to release a lot of stuff too. They'd have to get a lot of things in motion that they thought they buried.
Well, the other thing you did was the one song you didn't write on this record or have a hand in writing was a Duke Ellington cover that is also incredibly timely. And it also speaks to your knowledge, like just what you pull on that is not obvious. And it takes a lot of kahunas to cover Mahalia Jackson and Duke Ellington.
Yeah, to work with Mervyn Warren.
Mervyn
It takes
Warren.
a lot of kahunas to work with Mervyn Warren. Yes, I'm
Can
so
you,
honored to have had the opportunity. Yes, I am.
can you tell me about and the other day when we were talking about this, you said you'd always wanted to cover that song.
Hmm.
Do you remember your first experience hearing it?
There was a big band, a combo named Thad Jones and Mel Lewis. Thad Jones played trumpet. He was part of a family of Joneses. he played trumpet. Hank played piano. Elvin played drums. Elvin Jones played on all the John Coltrane albums. Hank was the session player. He played on everything. So I heard Joe Williams sing this on the Thad Jones and Mel Lewis big band album, and he did some very powerful. They did some very powerful big band arrangements around him singing, and he had a baritone, biting baritone voice. So I was a soprano. I could sing right along with him. I was up an octave above him. So
Yeah.
I learned come Sunday from singing it with Joe Williams
Wow.
on that record.
Okay.
And then I decided if I ever get the chance, the opportunity to try to do my own rendition of it, my own version of it, I would definitely, that would be on my first album. And it was. Now, what I didn't know about the industry was that that song should have been the first release. Now I know. That song should have been the first, then it should have been followed by another jazz piece, and then it should have been followed by another jazz piece, and then it should have been followed by another jazz piece, because that's what radio can stand. And then at the end of that record should have been Part of Me, or Bigger World, or Everything to Me, or Busy, Busy, Busy Praising My Jesus. Something off from the other styles, just to hint at this is a versatile woman. But me, I did everything I could do on the first album, because I think I can do this, and guess I can that, and yeah, to what, you know.
You could also add you was rapping on this record too.
Yes, I was. Can't stand still, because the rap was coming out, and I just knew I could rap too. I tried some of everything.
You did.
I tried some of everything.
Well, and we should also add on Come Sunday that earned a Grammy nomination. And then, I'd like to talk about how your collaborators came to the table, because you worked with Scott McLeod and Trey Scarborough, Victor Caldwell, and we just talked about Mervyn.
Yes, and Mervyn, and let's see who else. I co-wrote with, I think Thomas Kane was in
Thomas Kane, yep.
Yeah.
Lloyd Berry.
Lloyd Berry, yeah.
And Michael Mashaw.
That's right. Who's still around. So we talked just 2 weeks ago. We talked.
Did you really?
Yeah.
I mean, this is Nashville history all over this record.
Yeah.
And you had, we should also add, and you and I have talked about this before too, I'll Be True, which is also just great. You have Bob Bailey, Vicki Hampton, Kim Fleming, and Michael Mashaw on background vocals. And at the intro of that song is some real Nashville history.
Yes.
Leon Corder on organ.
Yes.
Corder on piano.
That's right.
Now that's Nashville.
Right. That's Nashville. That's right.
Was that your thought? I mean, it just seems like you
I wanted the whole song on there.
I want to hear it.
I wanted the whole recording. I don't think it exists anymore.
Wow.
Because I think all the masters of that project, I think they've been destroyed. They released me, and after years went by and I didn't come back and ask to be re-signed or asked to buy the masters, or I don't know what happened to any of that.
Wow.
I might be in possession of some of that stuff. I don't know. Because when Jim Ed released me from my deal, I left with a bunch of master tapes that I have never opened since I left Warner.
Wow. Wow. So that was a whole cut that you did with them.
Yes. It was an arrangement of The Name of Jesus. The name of Jesus is so sweet. I love his music to repeat. It makes my joys full and complete. The blessed name of Jesus. Jesus. Oh, how sweet the name. Jesus. Every day the same. Jesus, let all saints proclaim his worthy praise forever.
Dang, Donna.
Hallelujah. See, and I took it and I made it like a dance tune, but it has everything that the original song had in it. But what the rule was at the time was all new artists only got to release 10 songs
Right.
on the album, and the 11th song you had to pay for.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I had them. I snuck the front the
Mhm.
snuck a little bit
It's
of
like an intro.
on the front of "I'll Be True," which
That's right.
also featured my deceased dear friend Terry McMillan on percussion. He
That's right.
stepped out.
That's right. Well, and I want to set a little more context as well, because this album came out at the same time BB and CC were crossing over,
Mm-hmm.
the Winans were crossing over.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so there was a whole thing happening with urban, what they were calling at the time, urban contemporary gospel. And,
Right.
and so to me, we had so many names for things.
Well, I just want to say that yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you survived that, you were good, and those people survived that because what it really is the record industry chopping up the pie to eat to with
Yes.
another little mini sub delineation of the possible place on the charts. So urban contemporary means just can't be contemporary gospel because there's already people we got on that list. And we don't want to mess with those people. And it can't be urban music because then there's already people. We don't even really know what urban music is yet. So and it can't be gospel because it doesn't sound like B3
That's
and
right.
big choir and that thing. So it's urban contemporary gospel. That sounded pretty nice at the time.
Well, and I mean, and we should also say, like, there was a price for artists that were daring to do this as well. I mean, I remember this same year as your record, Vicky Winans did a record called The Lady, and she had to come back a year after and apologize to the people and cry and repent and the whole thing because they felt she had just been so secular, that it was just unacceptable. She got on the Stellar Awards with dancers and they just thought,
Yes.
all hell had broken loose.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so this was not, if anybody thought you were in this to make a lot of money, they were, sadly mistaken, because this was a hard road to hoe at that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. 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 It was, and it was really I'm so convinced that if you find your niche and you stick to your niche, and sometimes you're going to be digging and digging and digging, and it's just going to be rocks. But if you stick to it, it's going to thin out, and it's going to be sand sometime, and sometimes it's going to be rich soil. It's according to how far you're willing to hoe,
Mm-hmm.
how far you're willing to travel.
Yes.
And are you willing to take all of the hits? And I have to say, in the full confession and disclosure, I was not willing.
Yes. Got it.
And I'm not sorry. I was not willing, and I feel like I made a decision for my life that I'm so happy to have made, because now I can take what I learned and what I felt and what I experienced and give young, intelligent singers another side to the story so that they can hear, okay, this is what to look out for. This is what you're going to have to face. This is the kind of decisions you're going to have to make. Are you ready for that? Put that on your list of things to remember,
Yeah.
because it's going to come back up again. And you're going to do it anyway. But just remember, mother told you way back at Berkeley College in the fourth semester of before you even declared your major. You know,
Well, and there's an interesting like side story with this record because you had moved on after this album. And we'll come back to the record, but when you said that, it made me think about how you came to be at Berkeley,
Mm-hmm.
and it was connected in a sense to this record.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think it's such an interesting piece of serendipity.
Well, I had gone out as much as I could to promote this record, and it wasn't doing very well. So I was at my apartment, and I was kind of had several unsuccessful relationships to blow up in my face. And I got on my knees and I asked God, put me in a place where I can be blessed and a blessing,
Hmm.
and take away all these distractions. Because I know you have a role for me. I know you have a role for me to hold. I know you have a road for me to build. And I just really want to know what it is. So please, Lord, bless me. And I got up off my knees and I got a call from a guy that works at Berklee College of Music. And his name was Richard Evans, and he worked in the creative writing and production department at Berklee. And he in his class, his composition class, he had given the assignment, go bring a record that you want yours to sound like. And these two twin sisters got up and they said, here it is right here. And they had my Bigger World album. And he took it home and listened to it and contacted me from the information on the back of the album through my management, Gail Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
And she called me and she said, somebody wants to meet you up in Boston. They want you up in Boston. You want to call this man back? And I'm like, Boston? Are you sure? I don't know. Okay, and so then I called her. I called him, and he was talking about bringing me up to Berklee to, work in the creative writing and production department. I said, honey, no, I don't think I could do that because I don't know enough about the actual music, the writing, the arranging, the I don't know how to transcribe. I don't know how to do any of those handwritten things. It's all in my head. And so he gave he said, well, I sure would like to work with you sometime. I recorded Natalie Cole, and I recorded Tremaine Hawkins, and I recorded blah, 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 Donna Washington. He had a long list of females that he had been in the studio with. And he said, now I'm at Berklee, and this is just you. They need to hear your voice. And so he said, there's a woman who's trying to get hired as the chair of the voice department. If you don't mind, I'll mention you to her. And I said, oh, yeah, sure, go ahead. And I'll send you a DAT of some of my songs. And so the DAT had about 14, 15 songs on it. And she fell in love with 3 of them and recorded them on her next album.
Wow.
And I sang background with 2 other Berklee students. That was my kind of audition interview into what I do in the world to this woman, Jan Shapiro, who hired me right
Wow.
after that.
And you've been there now 25 years.
This will be the end. This is the beginning, the first semester of my 25th year at Berklee College of Music. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
What a loop of connection. It's
yeah,
so interesting.
yeah.
Well, and I think it's important to talk about too. I mean, you've been, I was thinking about this when I was getting ready for our conversation, and the only other record I could really compare this to was not a gospel record. Uh, but people also didn't know what to do with it. And it was sort of like a gospel record, and that was Mavis Staples.
Mm,
She made a record in 94
mm,
with Prince called The Voice.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
I've always wondered if they heard Bigger World, because there are such comparisons
mm-hmm,
in
mm-hmm.
how they sequenced that record, the things she talked about on that record. It
Yes,
sounds a lot like
yes.
Bigger World.
I'm going to be fully disclosed here. I went on. What did you say her record was 94?
94.
By this time, I have been traveling with Berkeley about 5 years, and we've been going back and forth to the Umbria Jazz Festival
Mm-hmm.
in Perugia, Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was maybe year five, maybe one of those years, 6 or 7, maybe 2003 or four. Mavis Staples was there.
Wow.
And I was sitting with her because we stayed in a restaurant, a hotel that had a restaurant in its lobby. And you walk through the restaurant to go up the stairs and check in. And so you walk past Herbie Hancock sitting over here having his martini, and Bob Cranshaw sitting over here. And oh, it was real nice. It was real nice. It was real nice. And so I had met Mavis in the lobby in this restaurant, and we were talking, and I mentioned my name, and she said, "I think I know your name. You're a gospel singer." I said, "Yeah." She said, "What are you doing at a jazz festival, girl?" I said, "Well, I'm a singer." She said, "Tell me about it." That's all she said. "Tell me about it. Don't you know when God gives it to you, He
That's
don't
right.
give it to you in one cup. He
That's
gives it to you in the whole package."
that's right.
I'll never forget that. As long as I live.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. That was
Wow.
an interesting
Well,
experience.
I think that, this record, I want to encourage people to go back now. You can stream it. It is on Spotify. It is on iTunes. You can download it, not just stream it. You can download it.
Yes.
And Donna has a whole catalog that you really need to um, investigate, because it is an expansion in a sense of what happened on Bigger World, because she's got a full out gospel record, traditional gospel. I Know Who Holds Tomorrow. She has Fly to Forever, which is
Yeah.
a jazz centric project. She has a new Brazilian jazz project that came out 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And her musical journey just continues to um, expand.
Well,
And
thank you so much for having me on your show. My God.
well, you are somebody that I really think people, if they aren't familiar with your work, they need to know, because you are, again, a musical sojourner, and you know no boundaries.
Thank you, God.
Yeah, you're a treasure.
God bless you.
Thanks for watching my conversation with Donna McElroy. Before you go, I'd love it if you liked the video and shared it with your friends. You can stop by my Substack, God's Music is My Life, and read more about the making of Donna's Bigger World from some of the other people that were involved in the project. Thank you again for joining us, and I'll see you soon.